Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about the first entry in a long time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Black Widow. We haven't seen an MCU film since, I believe, Spider-Man Far From Home. It's been a minute. I don't even know how long it's been, but Marvel's given us a couple of television shows on Disney Plus in the meantime, keeping us a little bit excited for our return to the films. We have a full slate coming up. Seems like Marvel's going to be dropping something every couple months at this point. So welcome back to the MCU after the close of the Infinity Saga. So one of the things that I took into consideration when it comes to this film is that this film had kind of like a big hurdle to overcome, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, Black Widow's not your most popular Avenger, right? Like, I mean, as much as anyone may love her, at the end of the day, she's falling in popularity. She's falling behind Cap, Iron Man, probably Thor, Hulk. And she's probably only ahead of her pal Clint. But that makes it a little bit more difficult to justify creating a solo movie for a not as popular character, and it's happening after the Infinity Saga is already over, and we know that she's dead. So like that removes the stakes in this film, because like at no point are we going to be sitting here like, oh man, I'm really concerned about Natasha's well-being. We know she's going to be okay. This film takes place after Age of Ultron, but before Infinity War. So like I said, we know she's going to be fine. So how do you make a film that is necessary and that is acceptable to the fandom, given all those things that I just mentioned that precede this film? So it's kind of a tough task to overcome, but at the same time, you have the positive aspect of you don't have to do any building with this character. You can kind of just go in there and here's the adventures in the past of Natasha, and just kind of go from there. You don't have to worry about making her likable or selling us on her. We've been seeing Natasha since longer than a lot of other characters who have been in the MCU. We were introduced to Natasha in like Iron Man 2 or something like that. So she's been around for a while. They don't have to worry about anything like that. So that's pretty cool. But because of those reasons, I was a little bit concerned about just how enjoyable this movie would be, given what I mentioned a moment ago. And I will say that while it's not elite by any means, it is a pretty serviceable and very fun entry into the MCU. I'd probably rank it somewhere in the realm of like around the middle or the top of the second half, kind of. Well, not me at the top of the second half, but like, somewhere around like the middle, or maybe like the top of the bottom third, somewhere in the range of like where I think most people, including myself, kind of place Captain Marvel. Like not at the bottom, but just above the things that most people do not consider to be the best films in the MCU. I there was a lot to enjoy here, surprisingly. And when I say surprisingly, that is just to mention like, all the things that I said a moment ago. The fact that this film was essentially able to overcome those things. It was still interesting. It was still engaging. It was fun. It was funny. And you got some really great action sequences in this one, which normally I don't really put too much weight into the quality of action sequences, but for me, I really enjoy really good hand-to-hand combat scenes. And when you got Black Widow, you're going to get some good hand-to-hand combat scenes, and you do in this. That's part of the reason, one of the many reasons why I rank Captain America Winter Soldier so high is because it has the best action sequences of any film in the MCU. And that goes a long way when the scenes are as good as they are in that film. Now, these aren't as good, but they are still really strong. So there's a few things that I wanted to kind of go over that I enjoyed, a few things that I was a little disappointed by, and just a couple of thoughts. So like I already mentioned, it's really fun. It's really funny. It really picks up in humor once David Harbour's character is reintroduced. By the way, I'm not going to spoil anything here, so I might give some plot points, things like that, like this is what it's about. And I'm not going to mention any specifics because the whole goal here is, should you watch this movie, yes or no? And right now I'm sitting in a yes place, but like a marginal yes. It's not something where it's like, if you don't watch it, it'll be like, man, you really missed a good one. It's going to be like, well, you made your choice. But when they reintroduced David Harbour's character, I think the laughter goes up a little bit, and it never feels like it's meant to be a comedy or something like that. But they do have some really good moments with him. I think he crushes this in general. Like he's so versatile, man. Like between Hopper on Stranger Things, Hellboy, and this, and then there's something else that I'm blanking on right now. He's shown a lot of range, so Harbour's really good in this. We also get some really good stuff, and I think this is kind of like the focal point of the film, if I'm being honest, is the relationship between Natasha and her sister Yelena. Really good stuff there, played by Florence Pugh. Yelena and Natasha have an interesting backstory, which we see in the film, and then we see them together throughout, I'd say probably like the majority of the second half. And they have a good dynamic. They have some good chemistry. There's some really good scenes between the two of them and as a whole, as a group. So I won't mention what this group is, but there is at one point in the film a group of people of which Natasha and Yelena are a part. Like I mentioned already, there's some really great action sequences. The action sequence at the end, though, slightly disappointing, not in quality, but in what it could have been and what I expected it to be when I saw, okay, this is the direction we're going. Like once it was kind of set up what the final act was going to look like, I was like, okay, this has potential to like really catapult this film. And for one, they kind of dragged in getting there. Like they set up what was going to happen. Like, okay, this is what the mission is going to be for this final act. But they kind of drag out actually getting it started. And once it gets started, it's a little underwhelming. And I think that could be part of the reason is because they dragged it out. But then another part of the reason is that they made a choice. And if you want to know what that choice is, feel free to comment and ask what it is. But they made a couple choices in the final action sequences, the final act of the film, that I felt kind of cut the legs out from under what could have been a sequence that really catapulted this film into the upper echelon of the MCU, as opposed to like the lower half. When you think of like, when you look at these origin stories, the sequel, I'm sorry, the original film or whatever, the first solo film, those are only going to go so far. When you have the sequels that are generally jumbled at the top of the MCU rankings, because those films can just go, bam, here's our story. We're just going to hop right into it. And you don't have to build up that character because that character already has a previous story. Whereas these origin stories or these original films for these solo characters, there's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to be done there. And it's tough to match like Iron Man or Captain America First Avenger, Black Panther. Like those are ones that are a little bit tougher to get to, and you need to do something special. And I felt like this one had the opportunity to like really make for some epic fucking action sequences at the end, and they kind of dropped the ball on it. And when I say drop the ball on it, it's still good. Like there's a number of things that are going on simultaneously in the final act, and some of those are really good. Some of them are a little disappointing, but it had the potential to be really good if they had nailed every aspect of it. But that's a little kind of like a minor issue that I had. A much more major issue that I had with this one is it is replete with heavy plot armor to protect the main characters here. I wrote down probably 4 or 5 instances of completely implausible plot armor that kept the main characters alive. And there's a certain amount of that I'm willing to accept, but it needs to be fewer in quantity, like maybe once or twice. I'm just like, okay, well, whatever. But like, there's a couple that are really implausible, and then they're too many in quantity. I think, like I said, there's like 4 or 5 things that I wrote down, which again, I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to spoil it, but too many instances of things where it's like, okay, that's implausible, and that only exists to keep our characters alive and to forward this, keep this plot moving forward, and that was pretty frustrating. That's really the only issues that I had with it. Pretty glaring issues, but at the end of the day, what really makes it so that this one doesn't creep into the upper echelon is that it doesn't do anything special. And there needs to be something unique, something special to really propel these origin stories. And I hesitate to call it an origin story, but it's her first solo movie, so that's why I keep saying that. And only, it will be her only solo movie. But it lacks something special. And I feel like Captain America, First Avenger, Iron Man, Black Panther, even Thor, they all had something special that I think made them into put them into the upper echelon of the origin films. Whereas, Captain Marvel, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, they're not quite there. And like I look at Doctor Strange and Ant-Man as kind of like in the middle. Captain Marvel kind of like at the top of the, maybe like the bottom third. And I put Black Widow there as well. And, that's just a byproduct of, I think we've been kind of on break for a while. This is a film that doesn't necessarily need to be made, and we need to just stick to the formula and get this thing out so that people can watch it and enjoy it, because it sticks to the formula very, very closely. Not quite to the point of predictability, but very close. Like, you can definitely see what they were going for here. It even has a kind of a vibe with Taskmaster, similar to what they did with Captain America: Winter Soldier. And if you wanna copycat an aspect of one of the MCU films, you couldn't choose a better one than Winter Soldier. But at the end of the day, once you start to notice that connection, that I don't even call it a connection, once you start to notice those similarities, it does take you out of it a little bit, and you think like, well, you could have done something a little bit more original. But all in all, it was a fun movie. I enjoyed it. By all means, it's not something where, like, these things that I'm mentioning are a knock against it. I still found it pretty enjoyable. It was fun, great action sequences. Like I said, good humor, strong cast, good stuff with the relationships between several of the characters. So, all in all, I would say it is still worth watching. It's not one of those ones where it's like, okay, you need to check this one out right now. Make sure you don't miss it. It's kind of like, well, you probably need to see it just because it's probably going to tie into other stuff. But then again, is it? Again, this character's story is complete. So is this going to tie into anything? Do you need to see this? I don't know. But if you're looking for something fun, a good 2-hour kind of like popcorn film, this does it. Like, it's not going to be anything that's going to, be so woven into the MCU fabric that it's a can't miss. So, if you're looking for a good popcorn flick for about 2 hours, this will do it for you. A couple of thoughts. There is a post-credit scene. The post-credit scene, interestingly enough, when I say that this film doesn't really weave into the rest of the MCU as much as the others might have, the post-credit scene will probably lose a little bit of its impact if you haven't watched Falcon and Winter Soldier. So that's an interesting little connection. Like, I was aware of the connection, but I had forgotten about the way the releases were timed. Like, I feel Falcon and Winter Soldier, I believe, was supposed to hit Disney Plus prior to this film coming out. So in that reversal, it makes it so that you need to see not need to see Falcon and Winter Soldier, but you would need to see Falcon and Winter Soldier in order to fully understand the post-credit scene. Whereas, like, if it had been in reverse, you would have still not understood the post-credit scene, but then not understood, but it wouldn't have been as impactful. But then you watch Falcon and Winter Soldier and you're like, oh. So a little bit different of a reaction than you would probably like or expect, but it exists. And I think the most important thing to mention here in my final thoughts is that we find out what happened in Budapest. And if you guys have been a fan of the MCU up to this point, there have been multiple instances in which Natasha and Clint have discussed or alluded to or referenced Budapest. We do find out what happened in Budapest, but I will say, for me, I found it to be a little underwhelming, especially because it's something, like I said, that's been, I assume, built up. Like, I don't think that was a coincidence that they mentioned it multiple times, because once it was mentioned more than once, I said, like, okay, well, now I need to know what this is that happened. And coming into this movie, the only real requirement that I had of it, aside from actually just being enjoyable to watch, is I expected to find out what happened in Budapest. And we did, and I found it a little underwhelming. So at the end of the day, again, I'm going to close. I do think it's a solid film. It's worth watching. It is fun. Do you need to see it? Not necessarily. I don't think it's going to tie into too much that's going to happen moving forward. You already know how Natasha's story ends. So it's one of those things where it's like, do you want a Marvel Cinematic Universe film to check out while you wait for the new shit that starts the new phase with Eternals and Shang-Chi and all that good stuff and Spider-Man? go for it. It's not, you're not gonna, I doubt you're gonna walk away from this feeling like you pissed away 2 hours that you're not gonna get back. But it's not something that, it's not on par with Iron Man. And I figure you guys would know that. Like, I don't think anyone's going into this hoping like, I hope this is as good as Infinity War. Like, I don't think anybody's expecting that. But that's where we stand. So I will see you guys for episode 6 review of Loki coming up next week. And then I will see you guys for the rest of the MCU releases for the remainder of the year. Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Spider-Man, which hopefully we'll get a trailer for real soon. Till then, peace.